What happens when a boss goes undercover at his veterinary clinic, devastated by what owners can't afford for their pets? Let's dive to see. Drake Thompson stood tall behind the reception desk of Heartfelt Paws Veterinary Clinic, his broad shoulders slightly hunched from years of carrying the weight of countless lives in his care. His dark brown hair, always neatly combed but now showing streaks of gray, framed a face that carried both authority and compassion. The deep lines around his eyes weren't from worry alone. They were etched there from years of smiling at grateful pet owners and comforting those who had lost their beloved companions. At 48, Drake had built this clinic from scratch 15 years ago, starting with just one exam room and a borrowed stethoscope. Now, it was a thriving practice serving the community of Riverfield, a place where people knew him not just as Dr. Thompson, but as someone who truly cared about their furry family members. His voice, steady and warm, carried an assurance that made even the most anxious pet owner relax. "Your pet is in good hands," he would often say, and people believed him. But lately, something had been troubling Drake deeply. He'd noticed more and more pet owners leaving without completing treatments, citing financial difficulties. The sadness in their eyes as they whispered, "We'll try again later," or worse, "I don't know if we can afford this," cut through him like a knife. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story than what met the eye. Every night, after locking up the clinic, Drake found himself sitting in his office long after everyone had gone home. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead as he stared at the growing stack of unpaid bills and incomplete treatment plans. He remembered the first time it happened, an elderly man named Harold whose dog needed surgery but simply couldn't afford it. The memory still haunted him, Harold's trembling hands clutching the estimate sheet, his voice cracking as he said, "I raised that dog since he was a pup. I can't lose him, but I can't pay for this either." Drake sighed heavily, running a hand over his face. He knew he had to do something, but what? The clinic already operated on thin margins, and raising prices wasn't an option. That would only make things worse for the very people he wanted to help. As he sat there one evening, staring out the window at the fading sunset, an idea began to form in his mind. What if he could experience firsthand what these struggling pet owners went through? What if he could walk a mile in their shoes? The thought excited and terrified him all at once. Going undercover in his own clinic meant risking everything: his reputation, his relationships with staff, even his sense of self. But Drake felt a stirring within him, a determination stronger than any fear. If he could truly understand the challenges his clients faced, maybe, just maybe, he could find a way to make a difference. And so, with a deep breath and a quiet resolve, Drake decided to take the plunge into unknown territory, hoping to uncover solutions where before there seemed only despair. The next morning, Drake arrived at the clinic earlier than usual, his heart pounding with anticipation. He'd spent the entire night preparing for this moment, carefully planning every detail of his disguise. Gone was the crisp white coat and polished demeanor of Dr. Thompson. In its place stood a man named Ben Harper, wearing faded jeans and a simple t-shirt, his normally well-groomed appearance now deliberately disheveled. A pair of wire-rimmed glasses perched on his nose, adding to the transformation. As he stepped through the clinic doors, Drake forced himself to adopt a completely different posture. Instead of standing tall and confident, he slouched slightly, his movements slower and more deliberate. His usual commanding presence gave way to an air of uncertainty, each step feeling heavier than the last. The familiar scent of antiseptic and cleaning supplies greeted him, but today it carried a different meaning, not as the owner overseeing operations, but as a client seeking help. His first encounter was with Marcus, the head technician, who barely recognized him in his new guise. "Morning, sir," Marcus greeted casually, his usual cheerful tone setting the pace for the day. Drake responded with a soft, "Good morning," his voice pitched lower than normal, reflecting the persona he was trying to create. The casual exchange sent a wave of nervous energy through him. How long could he maintain this charade? The waiting room was bustling with activity, filled with pet owners and their companions. Drake took a seat near the back, observing the scene with new eyes. Families chatted quietly while their dogs wagged tails or cats purred contentedly in carriers. But among the apparent normalcy, he began noticing subtle signs of struggle. An older man in worn boots shifted uncomfortably, glancing repeatedly at his watch. A young father held his child close, whispering assurances while their dog whimpered softly on the floor. Each interaction with the staff required careful attention to detail. When called to the front desk, Drake approached hesitantly, his voice trembling slightly as he explained his situation. My dog's been limping," he stammered, forcing himself to sound unsure. The receptionist, Karen, smiled warmly and began processing his information, unaware that she was speaking to her boss. Drake's heart raced as he watched her enter the details into the system, praying his cover wouldn't be blown. In the examination room, Drake faced another challenge, maintaining his composure while discussing treatment options. Dr. Patel, one of the associate veterinarians, examined his pretend dog, a friendly golden retriever named Max, who belonged to a neighboring clinic, with professional efficiency. As the conversation turned to costs, Drake felt a lump forming in his throat. "I'm not sure I can afford that," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. The words tasted foreign on his tongue, yet they carried genuine emotion, not because of the role he was playing, but because of the truth behind them. Throughout the morning, Drake encountered numerous situations that tested his ability to remain incognito. He learned to control his instinctive responses, forcing himself to wait patiently instead of jumping in with answers or solutions. Each interaction brought new insights, revealing layers of complexity he hadn't fully appreciated before. The weight of financial constraints became increasingly apparent as he observed other clients facing similar dilemmas. Yet, amidst the challenges, moments of kindness and understanding emerged, reminding him why he had chosen this path in the first place. By midday, Drake's disguise had become second nature. He no longer had to consciously remind himself to act differently. The character of Ben Harper had taken hold, allowing him to experience the clinic from a completely new perspective. This transformation proved crucial as he delved deeper into the reality faced by many pet owners, uncovering truths that would forever change his understanding of the veterinary world. As the afternoon wore on, Drake found himself drawn into conversations with other clients waiting in the lobby. One man in particular caught his attention, a middle-aged construction worker named Toby Jenkins. Dressed in work-stained clothes, Toby sat slouched in a corner chair, his large hands nervously rubbing together while his old Labrador rested his head on his lap. Their initial exchange began with a simple comment about the weather, but soon evolved into something much more meaningful. "I've had Charlie since he was a pup," Toby confided, his voice thick with emotion. "He's been through everything with me, job changes, moves, you name it." Drake nodded sympathetically, encouraging Toby to continue. "But now he's got this heart condition and—" Toby's voice trailed off, his eyes fixed on the floor. "I just don't know how I'm going to pay for it. My hours got cut back last month and rent's been tight." Drake listened intently, his heart aching for the man's predicament. "Have you talked to the clinic about payment plans?" he asked gently. Toby shook his head. "I don't want to owe anyone anything. Besides, I've seen those interest rates. They're killer." The raw honesty in Toby's words struck a chord deep within Drake. Here was a man willing to sacrifice his own comfort for the sake of his loyal companion, yet trapped by circumstances beyond his control. Their conversation revealed a side of the issue Drake hadn't fully considered before. Many pet owners weren't just dealing with immediate financial strain. They were grappling with systemic challenges that made it nearly impossible to keep up with veterinary expenses. Toby mentioned how his insurance didn't cover pre-existing conditions, how unexpected medical bills could derail months of careful budgeting. Each revelation added another layer to Drake's growing understanding of the problem. Another encounter came when Drake overheard a heated discussion between a younger man and the receptionist. The man, introduced as Sean Collins, argued passionately about the cost of flea prevention medication. "It's supposed to be affordable," he exclaimed, his voice rising despite obvious efforts to keep it down. "How am I supposed to protect my dog when it costs more than my groceries?" The frustration in his tone was palpable, and Drake couldn't help but intervene. Approaching cautiously, Drake suggested, "Maybe there are alternative treatments that could work for your budget." Sean looked at him skeptically, but allowed Drake to elaborate. Together, they discussed potential solutions, including homemade remedies and preventive measures that didn't require expensive products. Though not ideal, these alternatives offered some relief to Sean's immediate concerns. The gratitude in his eyes when he left the clinic stayed with Drake long after the conversation ended. These interactions continued throughout the day, each one peeling back another layer of the complex web of challenges facing pet owners. From single parents juggling multiple jobs to retirees living on fixed incomes, Drake witnessed stories of resilience and sacrifice that humbled him. The common thread running through all these experiences was the deep bond between humans and their animals, a connection so strong that people would go to extraordinary lengths to ensure their pet's well-being, even when it meant putting themselves last. By late afternoon, Drake realized he'd uncovered far more than he'd anticipated. The struggles weren't isolated incidents. They represented a broader pattern affecting countless families across the community. This newfound awareness weighed heavily on him, but it also fueled a growing determination to find solutions. As he prepared to end his undercover mission for the day, Drake knew his journey was just beginning. The real challenge lay ahead in translating these insights into meaningful change. That evening, Drake returned to his office exhausted but energized, the events of the day replaying in his mind like a movie on repeat. Sitting at his desk, he pulled out a legal pad and began jotting down notes, his handwriting messy from the intensity of his thoughts. The first entry read simply, "Toby, loyal worker, loves his dog, can't afford treatment." Beneath it, he listed specific details about Toby's situation, followed by questions that needed answering. How could they help men like Toby without creating financial burdens for the clinic? Was there a way to structure payment plans that didn't feel predatory? As he wrote, Drake noticed patterns emerging from the various cases he'd encountered. Many involved recurring themes: lack of affordable preventive care, high costs for specialized treatments, and limited access to resources for low-income families. These observations crystallized into a list of potential strategies. Perhaps partnering with local businesses could provide discounts on non-medical supplies. Maybe reaching out to larger organizations could secure grants or funding specifically aimed at helping struggling pet owners. But one particular idea kept surfacing in his mind: establishing a sliding scale payment system based on income levels. It wasn't a new concept, but implementing it in a private veterinary practice posed significant challenges. Drake sketched out rough calculations, estimating how such a system might impact the clinic's finances. The numbers weren't perfect, but they suggested feasibility if managed carefully. Excitement bubbled within him as he envisioned the possibilities: reduced fees for those in need, combined with community outreach programs to educate pet owners about available resources. Yet as he worked through the details, a nagging doubt crept in. Could the clinic truly sustain these changes without compromising quality of care? Would staff members support such initiatives, or would they view them as additional burdens? Drake's pen paused mid-sentence as he confronted these hard questions. The weight of responsibility settled heavily on his shoulders, reminding him of the delicate balance required to implement meaningful change. Despite the uncertainties, Drake felt a renewed sense of purpose. For years, he'd operated under the assumption that providing excellent veterinary care meant charging fair prices and expecting clients to meet those costs. Now, through his undercover experience, he saw the limitations of that approach. The true measure of success, he realized, wasn't just in treating animals, but in making that treatment accessible to everyone who needed it. Before leaving for the night, Drake made a decision that would shape the course of the coming weeks. He would share his findings with the entire staff, not as directives, but as opportunities for collaboration. Together, they could explore ways to address the issues he'd uncovered while maintaining the clinic's integrity and sustainability. Writing this resolution at the top of his notes, Drake finally closed his notebook, feeling both drained and invigorated. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for the first time in months, he faced them with hope rather than despair. The following week passed in a blur of meetings and discussions, Drake calling together his team in small groups to present his findings. He started with Marcus and Karen, the front desk staff who interacted most directly with clients. "You two see it every day," he began earnestly, his voice carrying both authority and vulnerability. "The struggle our clients face when they have to choose between their pet's health and paying their rent." The sincerity in his tone disarmed any initial defensiveness, opening the door for honest conversation. Marcus spoke first, his usually upbeat demeanor replaced by thoughtful seriousness. "Sir, I hate turning people away," he admitted, his voice tinged with regret. "But sometimes it feels like there's nothing else we can do." Karen nodded in agreement, adding, "And when they ask about payment plans, we give them the options, but they're not always enough." Drake listened intently, noting their concerns while sharing his own ideas about sliding scale payments and community partnerships. Next, he gathered the veterinary team, including Dr. Patel and the other associate veterinarians. The discussion here proved more challenging, as professional standards and ethical considerations came into play. "How do we ensure we're not compromising care?" Dr. Patel asked, voicing a concern shared by several colleagues. Drake acknowledged the valid point, emphasizing that any changes must prioritize patient well-being while addressing affordability issues. Together, they brainstormed potential safeguards, such as setting minimum thresholds for essential treatments and developing clear guidelines for discounted services. Perhaps the most emotional meeting came when Drake addressed the entire staff during their weekly gathering. Standing before the group, he recounted his undercover experience with uncharacteristic openness, his voice breaking at times as he described the stories of Toby, Sean, and others. "I've spent years building this clinic," he confessed, his gaze sweeping across the room. "But now I realize we've been missing something vital, understanding the realities our clients face every day." The room fell silent as his words sank in, each employee recognizing the truth in his observations. Questions poured forth, ranging from practical implementation details to philosophical debates about the role of veterinary medicine in society. Drake welcomed the dialogue, encouraging everyone to contribute their perspectives. By the end of the session, a consensus began to form. Change was necessary, and together they could make it happen. Over the next few days, Drake worked tirelessly alongside his team to develop concrete proposals. Financial models were created, resource allocations reevaluated, and community connections explored. The process wasn't easy. Compromises had to be made, and some ideas were shelved due to logistical challenges. But through it all, a sense of unity emerged, born from shared purpose and mutual respect. One evening, as Drake reviewed the progress report spread across his desk, he felt a surge of pride mixed with humility. The collaborative effort had yielded promising results: preliminary agreements with local suppliers, draft outlines for educational workshops, and tentative frameworks for the sliding scale system. Yet, he knew the hardest part lay ahead: gaining approval from key stakeholders and ensuring sustainable funding for these initiatives. As he prepared for the upcoming board meeting, Drake reflected on the journey thus far. What started as a personal quest for understanding had transformed into a collective movement toward meaningful change. The clinic he'd built with passion and dedication was evolving, not through grand gestures, but through thoughtful consideration of those it served. This evolution, he realized, was the true essence of leadership, adapting to meet the needs of the community while staying true to core values. The day of the board meeting arrived, bringing with it a mix of anticipation and anxiety. Drake stood before the assembled members, his presentation meticulously prepared, yet delivered with heartfelt conviction. "Our mission has always been about improving the lives of pets and their owners," he began, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "Today, I propose we expand that mission to include accessibility, making quality veterinary care available to everyone who needs it." The proposal unfolded methodically, each section supported by data collected during his undercover experience and subsequent research. The board listened intently, asking probing questions that Drake answered with clarity and confidence. When he reached the section on financial implications, He presented detailed projections showing how the proposed changes could be implemented without jeopardizing the clinic's stability. The transparency of his approach earned nods of approval from even the most skeptical members. Yet, just as it seemed the motion would pass unanimously, a twist emerged that threatened to derail the entire plan. Mr. Langley, the board's financial advisor, raised a concern that struck at the heart of the matter. "While I appreciate the sentiment behind this initiative," he stated firmly, "we must consider the long-term viability. What happens if economic conditions worsen? Will we be able to maintain these commitments?" The question hung in the air like a storm cloud, casting doubt over the otherwise positive atmosphere. Drake felt the weight of responsibility settle heavily on his shoulders, knowing that his response would determine the fate of the proposal. Taking a deep breath, he addressed the concern directly. "Mr. Langley, you raise an important point," he acknowledged, his voice calm but resolute. "That's why we've included contingency plans in our strategy, flexible pricing structures, tiered service levels, and ongoing evaluation of program effectiveness." He then shared examples from other successful veterinary practices that had implemented similar systems, highlighting their ability to adapt during economic fluctuations. The evidence proved compelling, gradually easing the board's reservations, but Drake knew more was needed to secure their full support. Drawing upon his deepest convictions, he concluded with a statement that resonated deeply with everyone present. "Sometimes, doing the right thing requires taking calculated risks. Our clinic has thrived because we've always put our patients and clients first. Today, we have an opportunity to take that commitment to the next level, ensuring no pet suffers simply because its owner can't afford care. Let's show our community that Heartfelt Paws stands for more than just medical excellence. Let's stand for compassion, inclusion, and hope." The room fell silent as his words echoed through the chamber. Slowly, heads began nodding in agreement, faces lighting up with understanding and support. When the vote was called, the outcome was unanimous. The proposal passed, paving the way for transformative changes at Heartfelt Paws Veterinary Clinic. As Drake thanked the board members, a profound sense of accomplishment washed over him, tempered by the realization that the real work was just beginning. The weeks following the board's approval marked a period of intense preparation and implementation. Drake led the charge, working closely with his team to roll out the new initiatives systematically. The sliding scale payment system launched first, greeted with cautious optimism by both staff and clients. Marcus and Karen spearheaded the transition at the front desk, carefully explaining the program to each visitor and guiding them through the application process. "It's amazing to see people's faces light up when they realize they can afford treatment," Karen remarked one evening, her voice filled with satisfaction. Meanwhile, Dr. Patel coordinated with local animal welfare organizations to establish partnerships that would enhance the clinic's resource network. Through these collaborations, they secured donations of basic supplies and medications, further reducing costs for struggling pet owners. The educational workshops began shortly after, led by dedicated staff members who volunteered their time to teach preventive care techniques and budget-friendly pet maintenance strategies. "Every little bit helps," one participant commented after attending a session on homemade dental care solutions. "This is exactly what we need." But the biggest surprise came when unexpected allies emerged from within the community itself. Local business owners, inspired by the clinic's commitment to accessibility, began offering discounts and promotions specifically for Heartfelt Paws clients. A neighborhood mechanic provided free oil changes for those participating in the sliding scale program, while a nearby grocery store set up a donation bin for pet food and supplies. These grassroots efforts created a ripple effect, strengthening the bonds between the clinic and the community it served. As word spread about the new initiatives, the clinic experienced an unprecedented increase in client visits. Some came seeking treatment for conditions previously deemed unaffordable, while others attended workshops or participated in volunteer opportunities. The influx of activity initially strained resources, testing the limits of the newly implemented systems. However, this challenge proved to be a blessing in disguise, revealing areas for improvement and prompting innovative solutions from the creative minds of the staff. One particularly touching moment occurred when Toby Jenkins returned to the clinic, accompanied by his faithful Labrador, Charlie. Approaching the reception desk with visible apprehension, he explained his situation once again. This time, however, Karen greeted him with a warm smile and guided him through the application process for the sliding scale program. When Toby received the adjusted estimate for Charlie's heart treatment, tears welled in his eyes. "Thank you," he whispered hoarsely, shaking Drake's hand with trembling fingers. "You've given us a chance we didn't think we'd ever have." Such stories became increasingly common as the months passed, each one reinforcing the importance of the changes made at Heartfelt Paws. The clinic's reputation grew not just for its medical expertise, but for its unwavering dedication to serving all members of the community, regardless of financial means. Staff morale soared as they witnessed the tangible impact of their efforts, fueling even greater enthusiasm for future innovations. Yet, amidst the successes, Drake remained vigilant, recognizing that maintaining momentum required constant attention and adaptation. Regular review sessions were established to assess program effectiveness and identify areas needing adjustment. Feedback from clients played a crucial role in this process, leading to refinements that enhanced overall satisfaction and accessibility. The clinic's commitment to listening and learning became a defining characteristic, setting it apart from other veterinary practices in the region. As the first anniversary of the initiative approached, Drake organized a special event to celebrate the achievements and thank the community for their support. The day featured tours of the facility, interactive demonstrations, and heartfelt testimonials from those whose lives had been touched by the clinic's expanded mission. Standing before the gathered crowd, Drake reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. None of this would have been possible without courage. The courage to question, to adapt, and most importantly, to care, he declared, his voice carrying both gratitude and determination. Together, we've proven that compassion doesn't have to come at a cost. Looking out over the sea of familiar faces, Drake felt a profound sense of fulfillment. What had begun as a solitary quest for understanding had blossomed into a movement of collective action, transforming not only his clinic, but the entire community it served. As the celebration continued around him, he knew that this was just the beginning, the foundation for a future where no pet would suffer due to lack of resources, and where every owner could embrace the joy of responsible pet ownership without fear of financial burden. That's the story, friends. I hope you enjoyed it. It was a pleasure sharing it with you all. Don't forget to comment below and let me know where you're watching from. It's always fun to see the global reach of these stories. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button for more amazing stories, tips, and tricks. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. If you'd like to show some extra love, tap the 3 dots near the share button and send a super thanks.